is today going to suck or be like a perfect day? Um, so I don't necessarily try to track like speed or like rate of perceived exertion in my head. I just try to lift. I try to lift 1 rep, 2 reps, 3 reps. Every weight that I do, I try to lift it as if I'm going for like a PR, like single rep, 600-pound PR. Because if I can control it down on my chest how I want it, hit the exact same spot how I want it, and pressing doesn't have to be, I don't have to hit it at a certain speed to be satisfied. It just needs to be controlled the whole way up. And if I get into that groove where everything's kind of feeling like I'm taking a heavy single for just my volume, that's when stuff moves the best. That's when I, can avoid any sort of tweaks and injury, and then I'm recovered for my next session.
What's going on, guys? Kristen Dunsmore here, and I am with the CEO of Evolve, Garrett Blevins, and we have a special guest today, Devin Williams, who just competed back in June at Worlds, and you currently still hold the bench record, which is 265.5 kilos and about, 585 pounds? And you casually just hit a 600-pound bench press for fun, just because you can, before you take some time off from competing. We can kind of discuss that in a little bit, but I was mostly curious about how you got into powerlifting in the first place, because I feel like it's such a unique sport. It's not something that you see on TV. So yeah, how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I think I probably have a similar story to a lot of people. I played football throughout high school and college. So I always had that kind of competitive aspect to me. And actually in college, I tore my labrum in my shoulder.
Nice.
So I was kind of out for like 3 months roughly of the season. So I'm like, oh, this sucks. I can't play football. But it was also like, this sucks. I can't lift weights almost more than I can't play football. But I was like, all right, I don't like quitting a sport, so I'm going to heal up and get back to football. And I went back to football and I tore my other labrum in my other shoulder. They're both still not fully healed. I think surgery is the only way to properly heal them. But I got really frustrated that I was once again out of football, but again, more frustrated that I couldn't lift weights. So I ended up making a tough decision to stop playing football just because I couldn't stand not going to the gym. So I ended up dedicating more time to the gym and just getting as strong as I can. And it was a blast. Something about the gym, I love it. But I was missing that like competitive aspect. So I wanted something more, a reason to go to the gym, to try to progress something, to try to be better than myself or be better than someone else in my weight class. So I'm not exactly sure how I stumbled across Russell Orhe, but I did stumble across him. I'm sure on Instagram. Back in the day, he had 1 billion followers. Every lift he did was on, every powerlifting reposting page.
Yeah.
So I started following him, and I was like, man, this guy is 5 foot nothing, 180 pounds. And I'm, at that point, I'm a decently sized football player. So I'm like, how is this guy so much stronger than me? So I ended up following him. My first program that I ran, I was in a fraternity in college. So we ended up getting like 5 guys together, and we bought Russell's power building program. It was like $20, like an Excel sheet that you get. So we all put together like your money, so you can put like $4 together a piece. Bought his little Excel sheet and sent it out to all the fraternity guys. And we ran that for probably like 6 months. And I mean, we were very new lifters, so like you could run anything and get stronger.
Sure.
So that's what we were doing. And it worked out really well. And at a certain point, I started making progress. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I'm starting to bench in the 400s. I can squat, close to 6. I was like, what more is there to just getting strong? And then I kind of understood what Russ did. He competed in powerlifting. So I couldn't get any of my buddies to sign up with me, but I thought it'd be cool enough to give it a try. So I think my first meet was actually in the USPA, which feels like a forgotten federation.
Yeah. Cold Feet Classic is what.
Yeah.
Like.
It's in Dayton, Ohio. Yeah. I think I went in like 105.
Kilos.
Oh, yeah. The squat.
Yep. And then 185 bench, and these are all in kilos.
Yeah.
285 deadlift.
Yeah.
So you basically are almost benching what you did on your squat now.
Yeah, I can
Like
bench
your
more than
max
my first
squat
squat.
is your bench at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, it's been a lot of progress made since then.
Yeah. Your coach is Mikey Davis, correct?
Yep.
And he's a flex, Joey
Yep, he
Flex.
falls under the flex system. Yep.
Yeah. So is that how you ended up with the flex training? Is because you knew that Russ was part of that group?
Yep. So I knew Russ was coached by Joey Flex. So
Mhm.
poor college dev reached out to Joey, and I was like, "Hey man, if whatever you're doing with Russ, I need you to do with me." And he's he showed me his plans, what he offers, and I was like, "All right, that is too much money for me to pay." So
Yeah.
I think I've told this story before, but I reached out to Joey, and Joey's like, "All right, I got some guys below me that I can recommend you to." And Mikey was the first guy he recommended, and I'm like, I have no idea who Mikey is. Like, he's not the clout guy that I see. I'm not really interested in him. And he was still, I still got to pay my price per month for him. And I didn't really want to do it because I didn't have much money at the time. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, so everything worked out fantastic. I think her birthday had just rolled around recently, and she got some cash for her birthday, and she offered to just pay the first 3 months and see how I liked it and see how it went. So I ended up doing that, and me and Mikey are very similar in terms of like build, strength, injury history. So we worked really well together. We're still working together. But it all kind of started from my girlfriend at the time, just taking a shot and seeing how it worked out, and it worked out great.
Yeah. Does she compete?
She does not. She
Okay.
trained with me for a little bit, but she's like a volleyball, swimming type of gal. So she has other athletic endeavors.
I hear you.
I just want to say this is the most powerlifting story I've heard so far, or at least recently. Like everything that you just said, pooling the money together, girlfriend pays for the coach. Just I got to lift weights, can't play football. Sorry, coach. Like everything about this sounds great so far. So that's an awesome story. When did you, within that whole kind of arc of football and then moving away, when did you first start lifting with weights? Like what?
Yeah, I think I was like 11. It was I think 6th grade, if my math's right, maybe a little earlier than that. But in middle school, there wasn't like a gym, but they had a program where you would go work out with the high schoolers. So as soon as I was able to do that, I was working out with the high schoolers. And it was a lot of football lifts. So it was bench press, squatting 8 feet high, and then like a hang clean with horrible form. So just a lot of like bro stuff to get you strong. No good form allowed the entire time.
If you think about bench, do you remember what you benched on like day one of going in? And
I remember my first 135 bench, like first plate on each side was, I thought I was the strongest dude around. But there was probably multiple weeks where I was benching like a 25 and a 5 or something like that. Like I wasn't immediately just repping out 225 or anything.
Okay. So you came in, and that would have been, because that's pretty early middle school. Do you remember, like for me, I can kind of remember each plate. Like I remember 25, 50. Like, do you remember what those increments were as you like jumped up? You mentioned kind of college where you were into the 4s, started getting serious with Russ's program.
Yeah. So I actually don't remember my 225 for some reason, but I remember 135. I wasn't quite a freshman yet. I was an 8th grader going to be a freshman in high school. I hit 135 we won one plate during our football training. 225 came at some point in high school, and I didn't bench 315 until going into my freshman year of college. So the summer between senior year high school, freshman of college, I remember benching 315 in my high school gym. And I was the only person there. I set my safeties up to like the proper height, and I went for a double I got the video somewhere. I gotta go find it. I went for a double. First rep was fine. Second rep, I freaking pinned myself on the rack, and thankfully the arms caught me. But that was pretty funny. And then I didn't bench 405 until I think I was a junior in college. So there's like years between these.
That's a very moderate progression. That's the most not a negative thing. It's just continued on, which is what's interesting all the way where you are now.
Yeah.
What was your body weight like at those times? Were you gaining a lot of size as well?
I think I was like 180-ish as a high school freshman, which was like a decent sized freshman. I was an offensive lineman, so I had to be big. And then getting into college, I got up to like 240, so roughly 60 pounds over my high school career. And then I've kind of been at 240 throughout college. I've gained like 20 pounds for my weight class now. But I mean, super moderate progress, super moderate weight gain. That's why I kind of jokingly say, everyone always asks, because I got a big bench, you know, Dev, what's your top accessories? What's your top tips? I'm like, bench for 15 years. I promise you'll make progress. But no one really likes that tip.
Yeah.
Not a flash in the pan.
I always think it's interesting to hear how people start, just because, you know, as new lifters come into the sport and they're comparing themselves to someone like you, right? And they're like, oh my God, you know, Devin is benching 600 pounds. I'm never going to be like him. Like, he's just a freak, right? And I'm 100%, you know, there's definitely some genetic component, right? But listening to you and being like, wow, there was one time that you benched 135 and you thought that, you know, it was a big deal. And if, of course it is, but I think it's important, you know, that younger lifters or newer lifters are like, hey, you know, Devin was a beginner at one point and, you know, was barely benching 135 and now you're at 6. What would you say is like your typical training week, pre-injury, when you were healthy and, you know, when you really started focusing on powerlifting and, you know, the typical type of program? What would you consider? Like, what does your program look like during the week?
Yeah. So when I initially started training, before I started being coached by Mikey, it was pretty like bro-ish. Just go to the gym 5 times a week, bench on like 2 or 3 of those days, try to hit like a heavy 3x10, something like that. Just try to build muscle, which I think is a great way for beginners to start. A lot of people try to go like super specialized right away before they build up a base. So thankfully I was a gym bro for, you know, probably close to 8 years of just benching often, benching heavy. But once I started working with Mikey and getting a little more specialized, I benched 3 times a week for the majority of the time I've been with him. We tried out twice a week once I started getting to like my bench sets being close to 500 pounds, like normally. Once you get that heavy, you kind of got to try to manage fatigue properly. But for the most part, it was 3 times a week. And it was, the first one was my primary day. I'd hit some sort of heavy single in that RP 6 to 8 range, kind of depending on what week it was. And then I'd back down and pretty much do the bro stuff I used to do. So 3x8, 75%, something like that. You know, decent amount of weight, get some stimulus, build your chest. Next day would be the third day. I think tertiary is the right word for it. So I actually do primary, tertiary, and then secondary. So kind of not really in order. But that day would be like 315 for like a 3x5. So for me, that's like 50% for a 3x5. Super duper light. Just get some blood flow. Remember how to bench. Like borderline not useful, but enough just to get some stimulus. And then my third day would be my secondary day, which was like my heavier volume. So no heavy single, don't worry about that. But I'd hit like a 3x5 or a 4x5 at like 80-ish%. So like decent weight, get some reps in, but don't worry about burning out on a heavy single. So kind of hitting a little bit of everything throughout those 3 days. And I would throw in some close grip bench, just like some 225 for like high reps, and then like some tempos. So down to your chest real slow, pause, explode up. So I throw the variance in there as well. So hitting pretty much everything you could think about in bench press, aside from like inclines, across those 3 days. And I didn't really touch, and I still don't really touch dumbbells all that often, but I'm sure that would be useful to throw in as well.
Yeah. Now, is there like a specific moment where you just like, you just notice like a huge improvement in your bench? Was there like any specific type of, because you said you were doing 3 days a week, and are you now at 2 days a week? Or
I'm back to 3. I did 2 for a little bit. Like I said, we were trying to play around with, if I'm benching heavy, should I give myself a break? And, you know, that third day now is like the one I said, 315, couple reps, really doesn't do much. But in terms of like when I kind of started seeing a lot of progress, it's really just when I started working with Mikey, because at that point I was doing only 2 days a week roughly. And it was like every single day was just decent volume, decent weight, no sort of specialization. So now with Mikey, we have, you know, we hit heavy singles, we hit heavy volume, we hit light volume, we hit close grip, tempo. We kind of hit the whole spectrum. So once we kind of hit bench from every angle and kept it consistent, it was, it was a lot of progress over, 2-3 years. So
yeah.
When you progress week to week throughout a block, are you keeping your volume pretty much consistent with what you just kind of talked about, or are you having volume as a lever you pull as well?
So the single I do is very generic. There's been a lot of like I've seen like squat meme deadlift kind of make the joke about the whole flex team does a single at RPE 6, and on a week 4 they do RPE 8, right? It just increases by 1 RPE each week, and they're like, oh, it's so boring, so generic. It works. So that's what I do for the single. It progresses by an RPE per week, pretty normal. Volume, if it does progress, it would be like half an RPE per week. But for me, I usually keep it the same. So let's say I bench 500 pounds week 1, and I take 400 pounds for a set of 8. Next week I bench 550. I'd probably still take 400 pounds for a set of 8. You might think, oh, you're not progressing your volume bench. You're going to be more fatigued from a heavier single. So if you're hitting the same volume bench, you're hitting it under higher fatigue conditions. It is technically progressing. That's how I kind of handle that.
Yeah, that's something I've seen, and even with Evolve that we've changed recently. It's something very similar to that, where you're consistently training about as hard as you can, and you're changing some minor variables throughout the week, but not making huge changes. Because if you do too much, especially with someone as strong as you, and you're making large changes, you're adding set every week or something like that, that's just so taxing. And the easy weeks get so easy, and the hard weeks get so hard. It's just, maybe it's effective. Maybe the super complicated programs are more effective. I think jury's still out on that. But the chance of injury for an advanced athlete goes up, and that's just never worth it. Because if you get injured, it just throws you off so much when you're trying to like eke out that last couple % of performance. It's just not worth the risks. And if you're ready to be consistent for 15, 20, 25 years, it's like, I don't need it tomorrow. I just want to stay healthy and stay in the game. That's very interesting. But yeah, I find it funny when people think more complicated programming is better. It's like, why don't you just look around? And it's like, nah, it doesn't have to be that complicated to be extremely effective. Look at the world record holders.
Keep it simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you're benching on maybe any day, but especially those light days, what's your mentality with the bench? Are you trying to think about controlling the weight, keeping it in the groove? Are you trying to think about how explosive you can be off the chest and how fast you can press it? What are the things that you focus on?
So I'm glad you brought the word mentality, because on my secondary or lighter days, I sometimes go in thinking this will be very easy because the weight is lighter. And usually when I have that mentality, it feels pretty awful because I'm expecting it to be really easy. But if I go in on a secondary day and not necessarily expect it to be heavy, but expects to work hard to get the set done, it usually moves a lot better. I used to try to like judge how things were moving based on speed, not like a bar velocity tracker, but just mentally how fast do I feel like it moved. And that isn't a great way for me, because honestly, sometimes the best days I have are when like 2 reds kind of moves like not great. Like I have to work for 2 reds, and I'm like, is today going to suck or be like a perfect day? So I don't necessarily try to track like speed or like rate of perceived exertion in my head. I just try to lift. I try to lift 1 red, 2 reds, 3 reds. Every weight that I do, I try to lift it as if I'm going for like a PR, like single rep, 600-pound PR. Because if I can control it down on my chest how I want it, hit the exact same spot how I want it, and pressing doesn't have to be, I don't have to hit it at a certain speed to be satisfied. It just needs to be controlled the whole way up. And if I get into that groove where everything's kind of feeling like I'm taking a heavy single for just my volume, that's when stuff moves the best. That's when I, can avoid any sort of tweaks and injury, and then I'm recovered for my next session.
You mentioned like dealing with injury. I know you brought up your shoulder when you were younger, but you said you had some knee issues recently. So what have you been doing to come back from that?
Yeah, so my knee issues have literally stemmed from college football back in like 2018. So it's been going on for 6+ years now. And it's so frustrating because it's not enough to like be on crutches, but it's also not enough to like try to be a really elite squatter or deadlifter. So it's essentially what I have is patella tendonitis, or it's tendinosis, I think is the technical term. It's like chronic small tears in my tendon that aren't going to heal by themselves. So, so I kind of beat my knees up through football. It happens. Then I went into powerlifting, and what really kind of sparked the issues were I had a squat in the USPA, no shade being thrown. They didn't put a clamp on one side. So when I walked out, all the weight slid to one side, and I leaned really hard on that side, and I felt my knee pop. And I think that's kind of where, I don't know, a tear happened or something not great happened. So from that point on, I was pretty much battling knee problems. And then just the very next year, I competed at the Arnold for the first time, and I failed my first squat, all 100% on me, failed on strength. And as I went to re-rack, the spotters tried to help me a little too quickly. I wasn't quite ready, and I missed the rack. So I had to catch all the weight on my bad leg, and I felt it pop again. So at that point, another issue sparked from that. So kind of unfortunate situation, but just a lot of progression of this knee issue because of unfortunate scenarios.
Yeah.
So after that, pretty much went into like rehab mode for quite a long time. So I was seeing a physical therapist, just kind of going through some high rep, like knee extensions, quad extensions, trying to build the muscle around that area and trying to get the tendon working, because the blood flow in tendons is not great. So you just got to try to get as much blood flow in that area as possible, just to get that kind of recuperated. And that does help kind of in the short term. You kind of get some pain relief and some, I guess, functionality out of it. But in the long term, it really wasn't solving anything. So I pretty much worked through a partially torn tendon for the past like 4 years, just because I felt like my window to hit some of these milestones, like winning nationals, getting the worlds, taking a shot at being a world champion. I think everyone's aware that those aren't common opportunities, and I'm very aware of that. So I didn't want to like put myself out for a year to try to fix this, knowing that I'm probably giving up the opportunities for those things. So whether it was smart or not, the past 4 years, I pushed through it. I'm able to say I'm a national champion. I've been to worlds, placed on podium. I'm very happy with that. And I'm finally content with taking that step back and getting things fixed, which is what I did recently. So last Wednesday, I had technically it was a knee surgery. It was very minimally invasive. So surgery sounds like a fancy or a scary word, but it was very, very minimally invasive. So they pretty much made a small incision on the side of my knee, stuck a little robot arm in there, and cleaned out a lot of like scar tissue on my tendon. Because what they use ultrasound to view it, and they saw multiple tears in it. No complete tears, which is great, but just kind of internal small tears. And what they found was there's a lot of scar tissue and another word for like bone dust buildup that was blocking the tendon from healing properly. So kind of like how it's supposed to go together, like weave together. There was just small blockages, so it couldn't do that. So they went in, cleaned out all the garbage pretty much in my tendon, and now I have roughly a 8-week span of just trying to let it heal properly. And if all things go great, it should heal nice and properly, and I should be able to get back to training and hopefully squat roughly what my weight class should be squatting. So
How crazy is it? Like, how crazy are you going not being able to squat or deadlift?
Thankfully, I can still bench, so that definitely helps.
Okay.
But this will be the first week where I don't squat or deadlift because of the knee surgery. So I haven't quite gotten the annoyance of not being able to do that yet. But I got a feeling it'll start pretty quickly.
Oh no.
Yeah. Start a support group for you. It'll be all right. Remember those labral tears when you couldn't really bench either. So yeah, in college I had a 50% labral tear. I kept dislocating my shoulder. People, I thought they were stingers, but it was partial dislocation. And so they went in at 19, had surgery, the whole bit. And afterwards, like, as long as I was happy I took the recovery slow, it was 100% worth it. I haven't had to have another surgery now, and it's been like 20 years. And so I just want to encourage you, like, hey, stay the course. It's 8 weeks. You can do it. You'll be getting your cabin fever for your squats and deads, but for those to be pain free and you'd be able to train as hard as you want with the volumes that you want, I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in terms of your numbers and everything. So
yeah, me too. I mean, on top of even just being able to train, I haven't been able to do any sort of exercise. I mean, this is how I want to put this into perspective. Since I won Memphis Nationals in 2023, I think, and that was kind of my first time really pushing through pain to accomplish something. Since then, I have not been able to have a squat session that I walk away pain-free. I haven't been able to go for a jog pain-free. Haven't been able to walk upstairs pain-free. And a lot of these things are minimal pain, so it's not like the end of the world. But it's almost like I'm sacrificing a leg to be an elite powerlifter, which I'm not sure I would say is a good sacrifice or not. But I'm at the point where it's like, all right, I had my first son. I need to be a good husband, need to be a good father. I need to be able to go for a jog, go sledding with my kids. Now it's snowing outside. I need to be able to do basic things more so than I can squat 800 pounds. So that's where I'm at now.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. It's all about that 800. That's for sure. For sure.
Do you have any, I mean, I know you're going to take the next 8 weeks off and obviously play it by ear, but what would be your goal? Like, would you plan on competing at Nationals 26?
Yes, I actually told my coach a couple months ago that I was for sure not going to do it because of the surgery that I knew I was going to have. But the surgeon told me, because I've gotten a PRP shot in the past, which is kind of like a quick fix, and that set me out for about 3 months. But the surgeon told me this recovery is actually a little faster than PRP because of how minimally invasive it is. So if everything goes to plan, I should be roughly ready to start training properly towards the end of December. And that'll give me 10-ish weeks to be ready for nationals. So I think I might actually take a shot at it. We'll see what happens. We'll see how, what percentage of dev you get there. But I think I'm excited to give it a try.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's exciting.
Hopefully flips on both sides. So, yeah, that's enough time. Maybe. I think that's a good play it by ear strategy. I mean, you can always cancel at the last minute. That's still respectable. But we're just coming as a bench specialist. You'll probably be doing benching 700 by then. So, you still.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but we'll see how the progress goes.
For sure. All right. So you mentioned, you've had kind of this history training without a coach and now training with a coach. And you've been training, how many years has it been with Michael?
I think 2019 was Mikey. So about 6 years with Mikey.
Okay. What are the biggest changes that you have, like, other than numbers and growth? Like, obviously you've had a ton of progress during the time, but in terms of powerlifting and training, what have been some of the big differences of training without a coach to training with a coach for you?
Yeah, so probably the first thing I can think of is just accountability. If you train by yourself, you can go off program, not necessarily like maxing out, but doing an extra set or skipping this accessory and swapping it out for one that you like more. When you have a coach and he gives you a program and he has a vision of how that program is going to benefit you, if you don't do that and you can't, I send him videos of everything I do and I put my numbers in for my accessories, so he knows what I do. If I don't do that, it's pretty obvious that I'm not following the program. So he can call me out for that and say, hey, if you don't do XYZ, don't expect XYZ. So as a person who, I don't say I'm good at following orders, that sounds a little extreme, but I like having a routine. I like knowing what I need to do. I like going into the gym and hitting my lifts and my accessories. So having that ease of mind of trying to think of what I should do in the gym versus having tasks to do in the gym definitely makes me more consistent. And if I didn't have that, then I would kind of fall back into my old ways of before a coach of, bench feels good today, let's max out, or I don't want to squat today, let's bench again, something like that. That just kind of throws off your progress. It's not really going to get you to where you want. And more so than just having a coach versus not, I don't just have a coach. I have Michael Davis as a coach, who is a multiple-time world's lifter. He's podium multiple times, dang near won a couple times. So knowing that he has done stuff that I want to do really makes it easy to follow what he says, even when sometimes I don't necessarily see the vision that he has. It's really easy to do what he writes for me when I know, all right, he's been there. He's, he's as strong as me on some lifts and he's a weight class down. So it's like a lot of respect for him. And I can understand that if I just follow what he says, there's a very, very high chance that I make progress.
Agreed. Yeah. And for those that may not know Michael Davis, probably very few people, but he's been through some bumps in his own career and have come back from things and worked through. And I remember watching him come up and just be a monster. We've both been, I think he holds some of the California records, if memory serves, where he just popped up and yoinked those back for me. And so, but I remember looking at his deadlift and just the way that he deadlifts and how strong he is. And I feel like he could do so much. He's just a gigantic, like largely muscled individual as well.
Yeah.
I think building that base and hearing your guys' story and so many of the commonalities, that athlete coach bond is going to be there, and it's going to help you stay on program. It's going to help you make the best progress you can because you're not just doing your own thing. I think we all have that tendency. I know at least I do to just go max on bench. That was 5 days a week in high school. Every day I could, let's go max on bench again. Shocker that I had a surgery at 19. Anyways, that's really cool. And I think that accountability is a big deal. What would you say? You mentioned a couple of guys in a fraternity just getting together and running a program together. It seems like there's some accountability there. What are some ways you think lifters can find that accountability if they can't afford a top level coach? What are some ways you've seen other people do that are self-coached?
Yeah, I think it's really tough to have full transparency and accountability if you're truly just by yourself. I mean, there's some really high level lifters that I know of that have tried stepping away from having a coach and doing it themselves. And they pretty openly say like, it's just more difficult and it's harder to be honest with yourself, even in terms of like rating how hard a lift was. Like, oh, I thought that was an RPE 7. And someone else is like, that's pretty clearly close to your top end, So if you are, I would say being by yourself is going to be really tough. If you want to try to have accountability without a coach, I think you would work towards like a kind of what you mentioned, like a gym buddy or multiple gym buddies. I think a lot of people lean towards that, like an accountability buddy, I think is kind of the word people use sometimes. But I'll just call it a gym bro. Even with me having a coach, I text my guys before the gym and we make sure we line up our training days to where we're in the gym together versus, missing each other by an hour or so. We will adjust our schedule to be there together. One for safety, we're lifting heavy weights, trying to be safe around each other. But also, it's nice to see another person train hard and, work towards a goal. It makes you want to do the same thing. And then you can also be honest with each other. I got my buddies ask me all the time, do you think that was high? And I'm usually pretty strict. And I'm like, you might get one red light, you might get two. But if you got yes men around you, they're saying, no, that was good. That's high, or that would pass. And then you go to your meet and you bomb out, you just look silly. So I would definitely recommend having a gym bro or a group that you lift with. But don't surround yourself with people who like goof around or just blindly approve everything you do. That's probably worse than just lifting by yourself. Because they're kind of setting up for failure if they're just going to say everything you're doing is great, you're training hard, nothing's wrong with what you're doing. You need someone to critique you properly, to hopefully push you forward.
Yeah. There's like an aspect of your own mental toughness. And although it seems maybe strange to us, we're a little bit older than some of the real young folks, but the people that critique you, sometimes they're casting shade, sometimes they're trying to tear you down. But if it's your friend and they're really a good friend and they're saying something negative, I mean, you got to trust that. You got to listen really carefully and see what they're trying to say, because if they're not trying to hurt you, you got to listen to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always tell the people that are just so shocked on meet day when things don't go well and they're just, put in the number and the strength will be there. It's like, you got to look at your training. Like, you have to be reasonable with yourself based on how things are going and have a plan. It's so great. Great coaches do that. They find that way to reach into people's lives and really be that voice. But a good accountability partner is going to be somebody that is not always telling you how great things are.
Yeah.
But they're going to be there with you, whether it's good or bad, and try to figure out ways to think through or help you get to where you need to be. Even if that's just accepting, hey, this training cycle isn't the best, because we all have those. It's part of the process. It's up and to the right constantly.
Yeah. I think it'd be funny to share, actually. Now that you say that, when I first started working with Mikey, I thought I was a decently strong person, and I was pretty satisfied with most of my lifts. So I would send him stuff after my training sessions, kind of like hoping he would like hype me up. Like, hey, I just benched, 450 for the first time. Check this out. And for the first probably like 1 or 2 years, this probably isn't true, but it's how it feels. Like he never said anything positive about my lifts. It was always just immediately critiquing them. And I'm like, dang, dude, like just say good job and then tell me what I did wrong. But looking back, pretty much every time I sent a lift, I feel like there was something I had to improve on to make it better versus just celebrating the lift. And while that might have felt a little negative during the time, like obviously it worked out. All my lifts have improved quite a bit. And nowadays I send lifts and he's usually like, all right, looks good, on the next week, but having that constructive criticism is a little more important than I think that I thought it was at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, imagine it, and with any sport, I think we would accept this. It's like, think about football and you're an offensive lineman and your step backs for a passing play, right? You're leading with the wrong foot or something and your coach is like, oh, good job. Good. Like you're gonna block. They're gonna slide through. You have to do it the right way. And I think as coaches, it is a good reminder to remember, like, hey, people are looking for encouragement. They are looking for the cheerleader aspect as well. They want to be told, like, good job, you can do this sort of things. But that's also where a lot of like coach mentality comes in of how are you going to be with a person. And sometimes and sometimes it's just the coach's own temperament that they're not more the rah
right.
type. But yeah, it is important to have, I think, both. But also, if you're trying to get better, can't just tell you all the things you did right.
Right.
And someone to tell you the things you're doing wrong and help you correct them.
Mm-hmm. So you've been training, powerlifting for about 6 years. And I know in the beginning, at least for me, it's like very, very easy to like go to the gym, right? Because like every week you're hitting a new PR and it's exciting. You're feeling good. You're with your friends. But maybe this is just me. Do you ever feel like burned out, or if there's a day you don't want to go to the gym, you're just like, I just want to, just relax, take the day off. I'll go tomorrow. But then, of course, you never do. Or maybe that's just me. Have you ever struggled with that? And if you do, I mean, because you talk a lot about like motivation and, the difference between motivation and discipline. And motivation is very, very easy, especially in the beginning. But I think over time, it's that discipline that becomes more important. And so how do you stay disciplined even when there's, you have surgery and you're not going to be able to train, but you can still bench? How are you going to go about that, do you feel?
Yeah, so I've definitely had my times of low motivation, and I've had my, instances of skipping a session and combining it with a later session, trying half of it and calling it a day.
So it's not just me. Okay, good to
know. I would say definitely signing up for a meet and having a sort of a deadline for when you have to be at your peak definitely helps. But that's kind of the obvious answer. When you're kind of in your off season, when you don't have a meet within, 3 months or so, that's definitely when the motivation can die down. It's kind of like going over the mountain. And now you're just on your way down. There's nothing to train for, I guess. I would kind of go back to the gym bros accountability. If I were to just say, screw this week, taking a week off of being a powerlifter, I would have multiple guys text me and say like, hey, where are you at? You missed training today. And, that's a small amount of motivation to stay disciplined. But you also have to kind of find small wins. And I think for me recently, it's been really great in terms of small wins because like the knee surgery went really well. I can see myself eventually squatting more weight than I ever have. Like seeing a PR in the future is like really motivating. And then also just hitting a bench PR. It's like, I thought this is funny. When I first benched 500 pounds, I was like, there is no way I will have enough motivation to bench even like 510 or 520. It's like 500 is like the max a human can move. And now I'm benching 600. I'm like, there's a pretty good shot I could push to like 610, 620, 630. So it's like, it's nice to have that motivation to like see progress in the future. So that combined with having accountability from your training partners is enough to keep me motivated. But at the same time, there's some days that it just sucks. You don't want to drive. There's traffic. You're tired. Work was hard. You got stuff to do. Some days it sucks and you have to go, or you can choose not to go and kind of fall behind in terms of your race to being great.
Yeah. How important, because you keep saying that having training partners, how important do you think that has been for your accountability? And how many do you have? Like, is it like a group of people, or is it just like one training partner?
Yeah. So there's two guys that I train with. I try to train with every single session. But there's like 3 or 4 of us that kind of rotate together. So I'm part of Circle City. It's a gym in Indianapolis. It's a pretty small knit gym. It's like a year old now, so it's still relatively small. So like everyone knows everyone. When you walk in, everyone says hi, how you been, and like you almost kind of know like what each other should be doing, like what lifts they should be doing that day. So we're all like very close there. But you ask like how important is it to have that training group? And I hate to say it, but it's like way more important than I thought it was going to be for me. Because I tried a home gym out actually, just to save time. It's like a 30-minute drive to my gym, so kind of hour round trip takes some time out of your day. So I was like, screw it, I'll build a home gym, and on lighter days I'll just do it here. Those days sucked, man. Like everything felt heavy. like the gym music sucked. It's my own music. It's like I have no one to talk to. So it's like I don't know why, but training solo for me is just not great. Especially like if I train solo at my gym, because like it's just a slow day, no one's there. It's way better than if I tried training solo in my garage. So quickly ditch the garage idea. I don't, it's hard to explain why, but like being around people, whether it's like people that I'm training with or just someone that I can chat with and ask for a quick spot, something like that. Something about the community for me is very important. I couldn't really specifically say why, but for me, it is important to kind of leave the house, make that drive. The gym is an event, not just like a little side mission from your house. So again, I can't really tell you why, but for me, I have to go to the gym. I have to go to the gym.
Yeah.
That's
I think it speaks to us as relational, beings, even, and just how we are as humans. It's like I say that as someone with a garage gym and training. But it's different. Like whenever I train, anytime I'm training, and when I get to go compete and be around people, it is a totally different feeling. And I'm fortunate to have a neighbor who's come by it. He's a ridiculously strong, crazy, insane individual. He's made so much progress in such a tiny amount of time, never lifted weights. But to have somebody just there, again, that you've got to work out, it's important. Because I took, after a major hamstring issue that I had, I took like 2 years almost off of lifting. And it was just so hard to go back because everything hurt. And that's the part of your story that's so crazy to me. It's like to be in pain for so long, and every session is causing, and even if it's not like 8 or 9 out of 10 pain, but it's just always there. Like that's the part of the story I think that's really amazing. Like I'm assuming all your training partners know like about that knee and have known through this time. How have they been with that aspect of things, with the injury, with making sure the clips are on both sides, having actual spotters in case something goes wrong? Like how have they been on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I probably complained about it for a solid year. And at that point, I hated hearing about it as much as everybody else. So I pretty much stopped saying it. But I mean, pretty much every single person in my gym knows about the knee issue, knows I had surgery recently. They know about the whole 9 yards. And it's cool to have a community that like cares about you enough to ask how you're doing. But at a certain point, they would ask me how I'm doing so much to where I'm like, forget about it. Like my knee's fine. Let's just train. There's no extras that happen in terms of like making sure we got 3 spotters or clips are on. But it's just like, is your knee good? Good. All right, let's go train. Because after so long, it's like, yes, it's an issue. Yes, sometimes it's an 8 out of 10 pain. Sometimes it's a 2 out of 10. So it fluctuates. But there's not a quick fix at the time, right? I couldn't stop in the middle of my preps. So it's like, check in on me. I'm good. Knee's all right. Let's go train. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. At some point, it'll get better. That's kind of how the mentality changed.
Do you ever use ibuprofen as a pre-workout?
My wife always makes fun of me because I jokingly say medicine doesn't work for me, which I know is not true. It's just something I say. But I've tried, like I really bad allergies. I tried allergy medicine. I tried ibuprofen, tried Tylenol. I tried all the stuff to like make it better. And it usually, whether it's placebo or not, doesn't really change how I feel. And I also feel like reducing the pain isn't going to improve functionality. So this sounds like almost masochist. Is that the word that people like pain?
Pain is life.
Yeah. At that point, it's like I've been so used to squatting with pain. Squatting without pain might be weird. So I'd rather just not take the medicine and feel a little bit of burn sensation, whatever.
Interesting.
I used to do it frequently. Take an ibuprofen, and then I learned that taking it chronically can actually, because it reduces inflammation, that it can actually hinder muscle growth. Then I was like, oh no, now I can't do that anymore. So now I only take it before a competition.
Yep, I do the same. My coach makes me take it before competitions now.
Yeah. But yeah, before I used to do it as like it was part of my pre-workout. Do you take any pre-workout before?
No, so I know I joked about medicine not working, but I believe I actually have some sort of caffeine blockage to where caffeine doesn't affect me. Because I don't take pre-workout anymore. I used to, but again, it's more like a placebo. I can take like 2 grams, literally 2 grams of caffeine and feel absolutely nothing. So I think something is, I don't want to say wrong with me, but I don't think caffeine actually affects me, which I think is like not an uncommon thing. It's a thing that, so I don't take it. I get there's like beta alanine and other things in pre-workout that probably help. But I take creatine and that's about it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think most pre-workouts are just, the effects are from the caffeine anyway. So I'm like, just have a cup of coffee. You'll save yourself like $50 or something.
Yeah. I don't have any supplement sponsors, so I have no obligation to take pre-workout. So I don't do it.
What about like protein? And I guess this will kind of fall into your how you approach recovery, just from like a sleeping standpoint. Are you strict with your nutrition? Like, I know some people who are very diligent about tracking, and then others are just like, I'm a plus lifter, I don't care.
Yeah. So like you mentioned like whey protein. I'll have a protein shake here and there if I feel like I'm low on protein. But that's because when it comes to nutrition, really all I care about is getting enough protein. Obviously don't have like an insane amount of calories, but I'm a bigger guy. I weigh like 270 right now. That's that allows me to eat like over 4,000 calories and pretty much maintain. So I have a reasonable, I have a reasonable appetite where 4,000 calories
is enough. 270, Kristen. Come on, don't worry.
I mean, at 4,000 calories, I definitely could be.
Yeah, so I don't hold myself to like eating, lettuce and chicken. I can be pretty comfortable with what I eat. But I just make sure I get like 260-ish protein, and I'm good with that.
What are your go-to protein sources?
I am a chicken and steak guy right now. I was a chicken and turkey guy for a very long time, just because turkey is cheap. Ground turkey around the markets near me is cheap. I recently made the upgrade to steak, which is hurting my wallet, but it's very good for just how I feel and how it tastes.
I love steak. The best.
I bought a half cow with my buddy recently. So
a half cow?
Yeah. Are you familiar with that?
I mean, like, I'm assuming half of a cow.
Yeah. I mean,
like
you pretty much buy it in bulk, and it came out to like $6 a pound, and I got 280 pounds of beef, and a lot of that was steak. So it was like ribeyes for like $6 a pound, which is pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And I burned through all that. It's supposed to be good for a full family for roughly 6 months to a year. And I burned through all of it in 3 months. So I had to start buying steak because I got used to it.
The 600-pound bench is making more and more sense to me, Devin.
And my wife really didn't eat much of it either, which makes it worse.
So do you have like an extra like refrigerator just
I bought an entire garage deep freezer just for a cow. And it's pretty much empty now.
Oh,
so I'll buy another cow soon.
There you
go. That's great.
Bench 600. You heard it here first. That's how you do it.
It can't hurt.
3 months or less. Get eaten.
Yeah. You did mention something about sleep. How much sleep I try to get. I used to be great and get like 9 hours, which is like plenty, I think, for anybody. I am a dad now, so that has reduced a bit. Thankfully, my wife is a trooper and handles a lot of the overnight stuff, so I can still get like 7 to 8 pretty consistently. But I don't know what happened. But when I became a dad, 4 or 5 hours, I'm okay. Like before that, 4 or 5 hours, I could not function the entire day. Now it's like if I get a short night, I'm usually fine, and it doesn't really affect training. So something magical happened where I can get less and be okay. But I would still recommend it. Anybody listening, try to max out your sleep hours.
How old is it a boy or girl?
It is a boy. His name's Silas.
Silas. Oh, how old's Silas?
He's 8 months now.
Oh,
so
okay.
he was in the NICU for 2 months. I've told the story a couple of times, just some unexpected problems when he was first born. So he's kind of like a 6-month-old. That's kind of how the doctors like recommend we track him as. So he's in this stage where he's learning a lot of things right now. So his sleep is very inconsistent. So he's trying to crawl, waking up at 3 a.m., starting to eat solid foods. So kind of in like the thick of the 6-month stage. Obviously fantastic.
My sister just gave birth about 8 weeks ago, and I don't have any kids myself, but I've learned the hard way. Having a baby is not easy, and there's like a few times where he's stayed the night at my place, and I was up every couple of hours, and I'm like, I don't know what he wants. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to change your diaper. Apparently he doesn't like when I sit. So if I hold him, I have to stand up and walk around. And he knows somehow when I'm sitting.
That's all babies across the entire universe somehow know that. Yep.
They're like, no. You get up and walk around. Gary, you have 5 kids. You're like a champion at this point.
Yeah, I know my wife does a lot. Yeah, no, but yeah, it's everything you're saying. I'm just like, yep. I remember kids. That's really easy in retrospect. Yeah. So the change from 0 to 1 is actually probably it's up there. And then the change from 2 to 3 was big for us. 4 was kind of like, whatever, we know.
Just an extra one.
Yeah, but when we went from no kids to 1 kid, which you're learning about, Chris, Devin, that was a big change. And then when you're outnumbered, when you go from 2 to 3, I've heard when you go from 4 to 5, if you go that route, it's a lot because it's more arms than you have between the two of you. So now you're in trouble. So there's these break points that you don't quite know about until you're in it. Yeah. But it's, Devin, I think I had the same thing. I just all of a sudden started less sleep. Just I don't know if it's because it was required or if it was expectations, but I can't sleep for 9 or 10 hours anymore, where I used to do that all through high school when I was younger. Like I would fall asleep at high school, like in class all the time. I was always exhausted, and people teachers hated me. And it's a great thing when you got somebody just snoring in the front row. But yeah, it definitely changed. And maybe it's just getting older. I guess that's like the whole thing too. But people out there, try to get as much sleep as you can. It's probably pretty important. But also not stressing a ton about your lack of sleep may also be a good idea as well if you can't get it and you just do the best you can. There's so much I've heard you say as you've been talking where you make the best of the situation that you're in, whether it's working through the pain, whether it's, getting as much sleep as you can or going with the turkey instead of the steak or whatever it's going to be. Like, it just seems like you do the most with what you have. And I think that served you well just across the board, even with those tough times where training isn't going great or you're in pain. It's just like, just going to do what I can and look for the small wins and taking what's there. I think that attitude is a low stress attitude, but also one that can keep you coming back again and again instead of everything having to be perfect all the time or impress other people. You haven't talked a ton about that either, thinking about how other people may be looking at you too much. It's been more about you wanting to achieve certain goals and a lot of that internal motivation. Do you care a ton about, like, I always wonder why people want to be the champion. I know you finished, it was 3rd, right, at Worlds. Yeah. And so obviously national champion into 3rd. How do you feel about that performance and making it to the podium, which I think is a huge accomplishment, a big deal. But also what's your drive to keep going and push all these boundaries for your own body?
Yeah. I mean, I think the basis is just some sort of competitive drive that I can't explain, nor can I deny it and, try to take stuff easy. But if I zoom out of my most recent progression from nationals to worlds to 3rd place, all things considered, I had, my son was born and stuck in the hospital for some time. So it was very difficult
I was
prep.
just thinking about this, the fear and the stress of what I was like,
Yeah,
that lines up right in the prep.
Yeah. So if I zoom out and think of like my externals, like obviously things turned out pretty well to be a national champ and then place third. But if I zoom in and be harsh on myself, it is very frustrating to come third just because I knew if I performed well, I could have got first. Right. If so, I went against Nanzo. He's the British 120 and Etienne's from Lebanon. If they had crazy days and just blew me out of the water, I would feel better about third than if we all kind of had adversity and it just kind of the way the cards fell. I came in third. So that's why it's frustrating because I knew I could have gotten first. But in terms of like why I want to be the best and why I want to go back to the drawing board and beat my best ever squat after knee surgery and push 600 pounds to be a normal bench for me. There's probably something wrong with my brain to make me this competitive. But also I think there's some drive that goes back to like, I believe I was made by God for a reason. And I think he gave me a pretty good gift of just being consistent and training and hopefully inspiring others on the path, but more so than inspiring others, just being the best that I can be, not wasting opportunity, and just being grateful for everything that I have a chance at doing, which is kind of the reason that I didn't stop for 4 years with all the pain is, I had this opportunity to go to USAPL and be a national champion. It's going to be a lot of pain, but I had the opportunity. 1 year later, I have the opportunity to go to Powerlifting America and try to be a national champion. And it's like those opportunities, fortunately and unfortunately, just kept popping up to where I feel like I can't stop because I have to take advantage. But it's also like, all right, you're going to extend your pain for another 6+ months. So at the end of everything, when I went to Worlds, came in third. Frustrating that I didn't perform my best and become a world champion, but also like the part that makes it really easy to be okay with kind of taking that break is if I would have won, I would have went to Sheffield, which would have been like super sick. Everyone's dreams go to Sheffield. But almost guaranteed that my Sheffield performance would have been pretty lackluster because of the knee pain and everything going on. So obviously it's I don't want to say it's like coping, but it's like there's some good and there's some bad. I'm okay with taking a break, having some extra time just to be a dad, get everything back to healthy. So everything happens for a reason. So that's just kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've talked about getting older, but you're only mid-20s. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 20. I'm either 26 or 27. I can't think of which one I am right now. So,
yeah. I think everything you just said, like there's so much there. You mentioned your faith, and I'm thinking about the people that have a calling on their life for something that they can't quite say why, but they see another hand, like a higher power at place in that. And as you describe it, it is like this fire in your bones. Like you couldn't not be the way that you are. And yet you do temper that with kind of in some ways, a relaxed attitude of the course of events. And there's not this panicking, like even as you just described of you got the surgery, you're going to take your 8 weeks, that's going to be its own trial for you as you go through and start crazy. But from what you're describing, I think you have all the tools you need to really go through that recovery. And yeah, to see what's on the other side, it's kind of like, focusing on family, making sure you can be around for the long haul, because there's so many examples of great lifters into their 30s or even 40s, they're still hitting all-time PRs if they're focusing on staying healthy, making sure they have a balance in their life where they can actually have a life alongside the lifting that they're doing. I think that's the big change that when we see these really strong juniors and their college kids coming up and then kind of they hit life, if they're going to stick around and find a way to make it work or not. Like how focused were they on lifting and how many, dozens of hours were they spending in the gym and all things before they had life hit them. And as a dad, I think it can be done. And it's great to hear you doing that same thing and having that drive. I'm excited to continue to follow you. I hope you get to the top spot, especially if you're healthy and you can get that 800-pound squat, the mid-8 deadlift, got the big bench, like to subtotal out these other guys. They may have a little bit more on the deadlift here and there, but I think you have a really good overall lifting ability for your lifts to be able to push all the way to the top.
Yeah. You speaking about just just your kids makes me think like another part of my motivation is kind of jokingly like being the strongest dad of the group. Like my dad could bench more than your dad. But more so like I don't want my kid to be like, my dad used to bench 600 pounds. Like I want him to be grown and my dad can still bench 600 pounds. but I also want to like, I want to be strong and be able to squat 800 and then go play basketball with my kid. Not like, hey, sorry, I can't play basketball. Dad's got a heavy squat day tomorrow or something like that. I want to be strong and like functional.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best way. I mean, Kristen, if you think about hyper specialization, right? If a powerlifter either early in their career, and you mentioned this, Devin, they get super focused on powerlifting, or if as you age as a powerlifter, you never do anything else. I'm thinking of the people like can't walk up a flight of stairs or something like that because they're just gigantic. I think we have a little less of that. But Kristen, would it make sense from like a scientific and biological perspective to have some level of just general physical preparedness and ability to have longevity in the sport?
100%. Very, very much so. And it's actually always interesting. I know Zach Robinson gets very interested in knowing what people did before they got into powerlifting. And most, I would say, if not all of the best competitors today have some sort of sport background. Taylor Atwood, he did football for a long time. Even Sam Calhoun, she was a track athlete. I played soccer and basketball. I think there's something to be said about having a general fitness. And actually, I would even argue that that paradigm of, SBD, super hyper specificity for powerlifting is kind of changing, where I actually am starting to encourage more, like a well-rounded athlete, not for strength per se, but just for health and longevity and like reducing risk of injury. I think that we could limit the amount of injuries that we see in powerlifting if people were doing other things that were not just resistance training. And I'm not saying like go run a marathon or, like do, like something crazy, but like going for a walk and making sure you're, like 30 minutes on a treadmill or some cardio, I think is important. And I think we would probably see a pretty good reduction in some of these injuries that we see. Yeah. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I say all that to say, I think being there for your kids and being able to be a normal dad, not like a glass figurine that can't do anything, can't go out. Like I competed right after Halloween just recently, but it's like, oh, what if I said to my kids, sorry, Dad can't go walk around and trick or treat because can't do that so close to a meat, guys. Sorry, like that'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. My wife, she coaches 7th grade volleyball. And there was like at the end of the year, it was a parents versus kids game. And I was like always at the game. So they just kind of considered me like the dad of the group or something like that. Anyway, I ended up playing, and this was maybe a month or so ago, and the knee was still pretty banged up. And I played for like 10 minutes, jumping around, blocking, spiking, whatever. And for the next like 2 days, I like couldn't walk. Like my knee was banged up. It was like borderline like embarrassing. It's like I can't do basic activities with 7th graders without being knocked out. So it's like, all right, let's take a step back. Let's talk to a surgeon. Let's get this fixed up. Let's be a functional human being moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I have a final question here for you, unless Kristen, you have anything else. But I have a final question for Devin. If you could go back in time, this is not that far back in time for you, but let's say you're talking to you started lifting at 11, sort of thing. So let's go back to like maybe freshman year high school, Devin. If you could give yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself for the best powerlifting career that you could have? What would you change, or would you just encourage to do some of the things you've already done? What's your best advice to your former self?
Yeah, so you hinted at this, so I've been kind of thinking about it while we've been talking. And I think there's one extremely important piece of advice that I give myself, and then another one that would be useful as well. So we'll start with the one I think is probably the most important, which is never push through an injury, which is literally what I've been doing for the past 4+ years. But I was thinking about it, and I think probably every lifter would unanimously agree on this. if you could go back in your career and say you never got injured a single time, think of where you would be. If you never had a setback, never tweaked a hamstring, never had shoulder pain, never had anything, and your training, instead of being reset, it just continuously progressed, even at a slower rate, maybe. But I'm thinking of like Atwood had a real bad adductor problem. Rondell got hurt recently. Even my coach, Mikey, he had a really bad adductor problem. Let's just look at Mikey. He was pulling, I think, like 850-ish when he pulled his adductor. Let's say Mikey never got hurt. He's been healthy his whole career. He's probably flirting with 900 pounds right now. He's probably flirting with being the heaviest deadlifter in the IPF if he never got hurt. So I think if we reflect on injuries, do everything you can, sleep, nutrition, train properly to avoid injuries, and you are almost certainly going to be ahead of anyone who maybe they make more progress than you faster, but they get hurt one time. You're probably still ahead if you stay healthy the whole time. So looking back, I think injuries are the number one thing to avoid. And some are kind of unfortunate, tough to avoid, but I think most with proper nutrition, sleep, training can be avoided. So I'd say definitely avoid injuries. And then the other thing would go more towards the motivation side of things. So staying healthy is important, but also wanting to go to the gym, not skipping any days. That would be, I would recommend getting a group of guys or girls, whoever you train with, and set small goals for yourself. So I think the problem with me is I try to set lofty goals. So like I squatted 750 before, which is really cool. 760, 770 is not a goal for me. 800 is the next goal. Maybe try to be more realistic. Maybe 771, that next 10 kilo progression. Try to set goals that you know you can achieve within maybe a 3-month span to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself happy with your progress. So I think it's really tough to keep training if you're not seeing progress. Even if that progress is kind of hidden, maybe your set of 8 has improved to 5 pounds. That's not really going to make you happy. But if maybe a variation, an incline bench press, your triple went up 10 pounds, something like that. Just try to be realistic, set goals for yourself. Try to see how much progress you're making, even if it's not just a squat, bench, deadlift.
I think that's great advice. You talk about the injuries and avoiding injuries, and it's like how many times, sometimes injuries do just come out of nowhere. Like, hey, they didn't put the clip on the bar. Like, I can't control it. Like, we're just hammering you. Anyways, but other things, how many times is it where you're pushing through, you're hurting, and then it turns into something bigger? And especially like we talked about the adductor stuff and like my hamstring that finally blew. It's like there were things leading up to that where I can look back and be like, yeah, I was ignoring those. I wanted the progress. I wanted it now. And that need for that immediate gratification, that rapid progress, the thing to happen now, it's like it just always bites you. You get burned by that eventually. And it's so dramatic when you look at a career that has those points on it. And sometimes they can be just career ending. Ed Cohen said that about when he took, I think, a sumo for like a double that he didn't need to in training. And that's when he really jacked himself up. And he couldn't pull sumo like he did for that 901. And after that, he's pulling conventional because it never came back. He could never get it healed. And especially with sumo deadlifters, I think that can be like a big piece for what they need to watch out for. But also big squatters, like for sure. And even with bench stuff, like once your elbow starts going, I'm talking about old people now. The young kids won't know these names hardly, but yeah.
I think Jesus is probably a good example. At Worlds this year, Jesus hurt his groin, I think, on his second attempt squat. So he didn't even take his third and pretty much forewent his invite to Sheffield because he knew if he got injured, he's probably out for a year plus. I mean, even the greatest people in the sport are being mindful of injuries.
Yep. Yeah, because you got to think about a career, not just this lift right now. And that just takes a lot of again, we've talked about motivation versus discipline, but this is another discipline piece. And it's why I think when we look up to, like, there's a difference that I have when I see somebody that's trained and they come out of nowhere and they're just a phenom and they're just unbelievable in like 3 or 4 years, they're already at the top of the sport. That's still really impressive to me. And I value that. But hearing about your, like, not even 135 on the bar and just slowly chipping away to now where you're the best bencher in the field. And it's really encouraging to see what discipline can accomplish. Obviously, genetics has to play a role, but you didn't just jump up to like so many of the people we've talked to, 95% of your cap in a 3 or 4 year period and then flatline out. Like yours really has been an angle up. And that speaks to Michael Davis's coaching and to your discipline and staying in the sport. So thanks so much for sharing that advice. Thanks so much for being on. It's awesome to talk to you. Excited to probably get to see how this post-surgery arc of your story is. So really looking forward to that, Devin. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you and chatting with you.